This is Brian Young, Super Bowl champ, 49er. You're listening to Matt and Dexter on The Grueling Truth.
Welcome, everybody, to the 49ers Weekly Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. My name is Matt Andruscavage. I'd like to welcome in my co-host, former 49ers running back, Super Bowl 29 champion, Dexter Carter.
Hey, it's good to be back with you, man. I'm looking forward to, going over this season review and looking forward to, how we can get started on this 2019 season.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it was not the season we thought was going to happen, but, I think they made the most of what they could given the circumstances. And I think there were some good things, some bad things, and hopefully they definitely got some things they can build on going into the 2019 season.
Yeah, I think under circumstances, there's a lot of positive things that happened. There were some guys that really did a great job developing some players that's going to really help the depth for next year. And who would have thought we would have through this season developed, in my opinion, one of the top, either the top or top two tight ends in the league, developed a backup quarterback that's, a very valuable backup. And I believe it's going to be a better team next year just because of the depth that we're going to have. And if we can keep guys healthy. And I think one of the things that, and I did see where the 49ers talked about it a little bit, and something that Shanahan is focused on is, we did have an enormous amount of injuries. And sometimes when you have those injuries, you've got to look at the possibilities of why those injuries happen. And I look at a team that, the great Alabama that just lost, the national championship. But the one thing I do like about Alabama, I do like about Clemson, is both of them have tremendous strength coaches. And they build tremendous strength, which helps them, bigger, faster, but it also helps them be more durable. So I think the 49ers have already started on that path. I think they got rid of their coach. And I think the whole purpose was, how can we keep our guys healthy? So I think Shanahan, is out there searching for a guy with a great plan on how to strengthen the players to keep them healthy for an entire season.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, it's the new year. I mean, Happy New Year, by the way. Hope it was a great one for you and your family. And, this is a new year, new beginnings, and it was one of the things that we saw in the headlines. Like you said, they fired their strength and conditioning coach, and I think that was one of the things that fans have been calling for, because we've been seeing this for a few years now. Just the amount of injuries is just, I don't want to say unacceptable, because, injuries happen. I mean, all about that. You went through that in your career. You don't plan for that. You do everything you can not get injured, and it happens to everybody. But the amount of injuries that have been piling up, it just can derail your season so quickly. They had to do something. And so they probably made the right move here, and now they got to go find somebody, like you said, that's going to come in with a plan to keep this team healthy. Because if they can be healthy, we know it's a good team.
Right. And we don't want to put everything on the strength coach, but it can't be as consistent as it's been over the last couple of years. There's got to be a way and a method, which I'm sure whoever they evaluate to come in has got to lay out a plan and a history of how they have kept their players healthy. So I think we're all looking forward to the possibilities of how that's going to come to fruition.
Yeah. I mean, the real theme for this season seems to be the promising playoff berth that ended before it ever began. And that really had a lot to do with the injuries. You got Jimmy Garoppolo, who was supposed to play even better this year with all the additional weapons and an improved defense. They're supposed to have the running back combo of Jerick McKinnon and Matt Breida, which was supposed to be a nightmare for defensive coordinators. They're supposed to have a real deep receiving core and make it real difficult to cover due to Jimmy in the run game. We thought George Kittle would have a good season, and that happened. But all the rest of the stuff, the defense didn't quite pan out like we thought. And a lot of it did have to do with injuries. But, once you lose your quarterback, I mean, if you take Drew Brees away from the Saints, they're going to struggle. You take Tom Brady away from the Patriots. You take Aaron Rodgers away from the Packers. That's just what happens. When you lose your quarterback, it's pretty much all bets are off in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. But Barack is going to walk back into a situation, with these great weapons around him. But he's also, got an offensive line that's been, challenged. They've stepped up to the task. They've protected the backup quarterback, both of them, and you had an emergence of, the rookie right tackle, McGlinchey, who, I believe was the offensive rookie of the year, on the team that really, performed really well along with those other guys. So he's going to come back, I think ready to be on this stable of offensive linemen for a long time. So he's had a great start to his rookie campaign, and I think, he was worth, where he was drafted. And I think he's going to pay off as we move forward into the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That was one of the positives. I think we've got a list here of some positives and some negatives that happens during this season. The negative, obviously, right off the top, as Coach Shanahan said at the beginning of the 2018 season, you are what your record says you are. And they only won 6 games last year, so going into this season, the goal was to be better than 6 wins. But this year, due to lots of different circumstances, they were 4-12. So, how do you find positives in that? Well, we found some positives, and so I'm going to list off a couple of them, and we'll kind of talk about it a little bit. For the second straight season, the 49ers were highly competitive in most of their games. If they're healthy next year, for all the experience they've gotten these last 2 seasons, being in these close games where a season or 2 before that, they're not even competitive. And now they're in these games. Now, we're not talking about moral victories here because we agree there's no moral victories. However, you see them being much more competitive and in these football games. Those are the kind of things that young teams, as they get better and as they continue to develop, you start to find ways to win those games, and that's going to be huge going forward.
Absolutely. I think the development of Dante Pettis, as a rookie, that could have easily been, that rookie, MVP or and Jeff Wilson wouldn't have been the rookie MVP, but those are guys that develop. So when, Garoppolo comes back and finds all these weapons and then get Breida healthy and then get McKinnon healthy, we're going to see Shanahan offense performing the way it did 3 or 4 years ago when he was in Atlanta. So I think that's what we're all looking forward to. And I think, again, we said it when it happened, when Shanahan came in, that he was the right guy. And I think these last 2 years of adversity has only strengthened his resolve, strengthened his ability to develop his entire team, his offensive, game plan. And I think next year, we'll keep our fingers crossed for the team to be blessed with health. And I think if they are, I really think the NFC West is going to be, a division to be reckoned with.
Yeah, that's for sure. The Rams probably have a 2-year window until Jared Goff gets paid. So they're going to be tough. And then, Seattle doesn't seem to go away. I think we all want Seattle to go away, but they're not really going away yet. Russell Wilson's a great quarterback. And so, if the Niners are what we think they can be, this can be really competitive division. And, who knows what Arizona will do in the offseason. But,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But
Arizona made that move, to get, in my opinion, another young coach like Los Angeles, and hoping he can bring the same result. And hopefully for the division and the league, he can bring that energy, be a first-time NFL head coach, and do well. Because I always wish, them well, which will only be good for the NFL. So if he is, and he can have immediate success like the Rams did, and that NFC West, I'm telling you, oh man, there's going to be something to be dealt with because it looks good right now.
Yeah, the fan in me wants it to be like some of the years in the 80s and 90s when it was just the 49ers and everybody else, where it was easy to cruise into the division title. But there is something to be said for when you have even in the days, the Jim Harbaugh days, when it was when Seattle was really difficult to beat. And even the Rams gave them a hard time. It was better for the team going into the playoffs to have dealt with a difficult division. So there's something to be said for either way.
Absolutely. I think it only prepares all these teams. If they're going to make the playoffs, they're going to make the playoffs being prepared, the challenge that is definitely there for them to be faced with. So I think it's going to, just be better for all of them. But I do know, and we're talking about our Niners, and we'll focus on that. The Niners, man, I definitely see next year, I see playoffs. I can't tell you whether they'll win the division or not, but I think if everybody stays healthy and keep position, there's no way that this team cannot be a viable cause, in the playoff series.
Totally. I mean, right now there's so much talent. I mean, we were talking a little bit about all the some of the players that they discovered during this difficult season. Some of the guys they found, like you mentioned, Nick Mullins, valuable backup quarterback. There's just such a shortage of backup quarterbacks right now. You just kind of think of Nick Foles. There's not a whole lot of them out there, but Nick Mullins proved that he was a very, very valuable backup quarterback. We saw the development of DJ Reed both in the secondary and his kickoff return skills. We saw Raheem Mostert, who's one of the best special teams gunners in the league, but then this year he emerged as a really good second or third option at running back. I mean, before he broke his arm, he was carving up teams for 5-6 yards a carry. And that was really good to see. And then another running back, which you mentioned, Jeff Wilson, another guy who's got the potential to be a really good reserve back. The guy finishes runs really well. He's got some speed. His problem right now is he's fumbling, but that hopefully can be corrected. But you can see where he might have a spot on this roster. But then we saw some guys on the defensive end of the ball. We saw Cassius Marsh. I thought he played a lot better this year, getting some sacks. And Sheldon Day, the guy, the cast off from the Jaguars, who found a nice little spot on this defense as a reserve defensive lineman. We saw linebacker Elijah Lee step in after the Reuben Foster situation. He had a pretty nice season. And, there's a couple other guys, Tavarius Moore and even Richie James. Richie James, the 7th-round pick from 2017, who I believe he returned a kickoff return this year for a touchdown and even caught a touchdown pass. So you can just see just the amount of there's a lot of depth on this team.
Right. Yeah. None of these things would have occurred if it wasn't for the unfortunate, circumstances of guys getting injured. Because just to hit on a few things like that you already hit on, I personally didn't even know Nick Mullins was on the team, and that's sad to say. If Garoppolo wouldn't have got hurt, he'd have still been sitting on third team. So, because of those circumstances there, I think we've got three guys that, are more than serviceable. They can get in and play. And I think, the tier system right now is right. It's Garoppolo, Mullins, and then Beathard. So we got 1, 2, 3. We're set up. And again, if it wasn't for the injuries, we wouldn't have discovered, the other two, running backs behind Breida, and McKinney. So I think we're going to be in a really good situation, going into next year.
Yeah, and another thing that really emerged this year was, and you were kind of touching on this, was the offensive line. I mean, we saw, Joe Staley was his usual consistent self. He's probably not the all-pro guy that we saw a couple of years ago, but he's still very good. And then Weston Richburg, the free agent center. I mean, Shanahan in a lot of his schemes really relies on an athletic center that can get blocks on the first and the second level, and he does that pretty well. Had some penalty problems early in the season, but it looked like he cleaned a lot of that up later in the year. But what was really impressive to me was the other three guys. Yeah, you mentioned rookie Mike McGlinchey. I mean, that was there were mixed reviews on him, and I think he blew everybody away when you take a look at what how consistent he was, how well he played against guys like Von Miller, Khalil Mack. I mean, I'm not saying he dominated everybody that he played, but he did play well most of the time against some pretty good defensive linemen. So I think he definitely gets an A for this year. And then the guards. Guard was a situation going into the season. That was a big question mark, especially right guard. I thought Mike Person stepped in really and played pretty well, especially times where he played through injury. And then Laken Tomlinson, he was a cast-off from Detroit, and they traded a 5th or a 6th round pick for him. And, it was kind of it almost seemed like a stopgap situation or just kind of a roll of the dice. But he's turned out to be a pretty good left guard. So, and they were healthy the whole year together, which was really, really big for continuity. So I like the offensive line going into next year.
Right, and what's interesting is going into the season, Pro Football, what is it, Pro Football Focus or whatever it is?
Yeah.
They rank all the offensive linemen across the league, and they felt like the 49ers line was middle of the pack with great upside. And I think they were pretty right on it. They probably had them marked up more than some people, because of the just inconsistencies of the previous year. But being in the middle of the pack going to this season with much upside, I think Pro Football Focus was right on it. They were right on it because this team is right where I think Pro Football Focus would be after the season. And they are. I mean, they're going into next season with a lot of optimism, confidence, and those running backs and quarterbacks, I guarantee you, they're going into next season, 2019, with a lot of confidence because they know those big boys up front have prepared for 2019 to be a great year.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about that ranking, middle of the road, or middle of the pack with good upside, you think about where they were. They were nowhere near the middle of the pack. So that to me is a pretty big improvement, especially considering you're throwing in a free agent center. Center's a pretty important position. You got to make sure you got the right person. And then 3 guys that, I don't know, I didn't see Mike Person coming in. I wasn't sure about McGlinchey. I knew he was pretty good against the run, but not against the pass. I wasn't sure. And then Laken Tomlinson was very spotty last year. Thought he played well near the end of the season, but who knew with him? But so for them to me, that's actually a pretty good ranking given where they were.
Absolutely. McGlinchey came in as Pro Football Focus top ranked tackle, in the draft. So for us to get him, it was a great pick. And if we could follow that up this year, hopefully we can follow that up this year, in some of the, options, which we'll talk about here shortly. But last year, if it was up to me, we wouldn't have gotten him. I'm glad we did get him, but it's certainly big positive is who I did talk about wasn't like it was a bad choice because Derwin James ended up Defensive Rookie of the Year and helped, the Chargers, into the playoffs and playing very, very well. But, hey, your choice was McGlinchey, and he panned out. So it was, it was great for San Diego, and the selection that we had was great for us, too, moving into the future. He'll help be, a long time, mainstay on the offensive line for quite some time.
Definitely. I mean, I would have liked Derwin James too, but you could see at that juncture at the draft when they traded right tackle Trent Brown to the Patriots, and they were, right tackle was a really big hole. So you could see that they were trying to fill that right away. I think they would have probably liked to have gotten a guy like Derwin James, but they were probably willing to go roll the dice with Adrian Colbert and Jaquiski Tart and really get that offensive line piece filled. But who knows? I mean, this year, I have a feeling they're going to be addressing some key spots in the defensive backfield and in the front seven. But no, I like where the offensive line is headed. I like where the depth is headed. And then, we mentioned George Kittle. George Kittle. I think we all thought he was pretty good, at Iowa. This 5th round pick. He looked like he was pretty good at the end of the 2017 season once Jimmy Garoppolo got in there. But going into the season, when we saw him in preseason, it looked like he was going to be a pretty big piece of the puzzle, and that we were pretty much dead on right on that one. We thought George Kittle would have a good season, but, man, I think he exceeded all expectations. Had the best tight end season ever for yardage.
Yeah, nobody would have expected his explosion, his speed, his big play-making ability. He would have even thought that. He didn't have that at out. He didn't have that last year. Nobody would have foreseen his big play ability, the speed that he possessed and showed. It leaves me speechless because none of us thought that. But, that goes to show you that players develop at different times in their career. And, man, second year in the league, and he develops like this, man, I know the 49ers, they got one behind the scenes. Front of the scenes too, but behind the scenes, I am sure they're saying, we didn't know. We didn't know. And nobody knew. Because if they did, somebody would have jumped on him prior to the fifth round.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a great development in this player this year.
Yeah, they went to Iowa looking at C.J. Beathard, and they found Kittle. That's just like, I think we talked about that the last time. That's a lot like the Dwight Clark story. They went looking for Joe, and they found Dwight also.
Yeah.
So that was just a really fortunate pickup, and good to see him develop the way he did, because now, and he did all this with three different quarterbacks. He had Mullins throwing to him, he had Beathard throwing to him, he had Jimmy throwing to him. Imagine what he's going to do with a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo for the season. I'm not saying he's going to break his own yardage record, but he should be pretty explosive at big spots in games.
Absolutely. Only time will tell.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I don't think it's going to take very much to get this team over the hump if everybody comes back healthy. And, one of the other keys is Robbie Gould. Robbie Gould has had two of the best seasons for kickers in the whole league. And I think they have to re-sign him. He's too valuable.
Oh, that's without question.
You look at I bet the Bears kind of wish they had him back after. Granted, it looks like when you slow that last kick down that the Eagles blocked it, but still, Robbie Gould's old reliable, and he's just someone you got to. What we've seen the last two seasons, you just feel so safe with Robbie. Whenever Robbie Gould trots out there, you just know he's going to make it, and that's what you need a kicker.
Absolutely, he is a mainstay, and he's a priority. So he definitely can't get let out of that 49er facility.
Yeah, and so as we move in, there were definitely some negatives this year. To me, the negatives were probably all on the defensive side of the ball for the most part. You figure like a Killa Witherspoon, second year guy. He's got really good size. He can move pretty well for his size. Kind of thought that he would play better given that Richard Sherman was on the other side of him. We knew he was going to get a lot of balls thrown his way, but he got beat a lot, especially in the first half of the season. I thought he played better in the second half, but there's no guarantee that he's going to be a starter next year. And so I think they do have to bring someone in to push him. And if he can win the job, great. If he can't, I think he'll be a pretty good reserve. But they have to make sure that they get the best guy possible at the other corner.
Right. Absolutely. I think going into the draft, we'll talk about, the position that we think they need to go after. But at the same time, they've got to look at that free agent pool in 2019, safeties and corners and who's available. Because regardless of what they do with the second pick, which I don't think they need to pick a corner or a safety there. I think we all are in agreement. We have to get the edge rusher, with the possibility of them trading for one of the top two receivers in the league, but that's another topic, for later. But just to throw out there what you were talking about, you and I hit on it, during our pre-show, is we both think with Richard Sherman here, that there's a great chance that Earl Thomas will find his way here to join his old defensive coordinator and Richard Sherman. So there's a great possibility there. We can go and talk about Ha Clinton Dix or Marcus Joyner at safeties, but I think at the end of the day, um, Earl Thomas is the top choice, and I think he will come. So that would be a great thing for the secondary. Then you got to look at the corner options that are out there. You look at the Denard, cornerback for Cincinnati Bengals, and another great option is Jason Verrett, corner from the Chargers. I mean, him and Bradley Roby, corner at Denver. So you know what? There are some options out there to go out there and get a corner and a safety that can shore up that secondary and be an instant upgrade. So I really believe that Shanahan, they've got their heads together right now, and they're talking about, hey, who are our top picks at corner and safety at free agency, and they're looking at that big list on how they can woo those guys to come to Santa Clara.
Yeah, I think this year would be a really good idea first, Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas was the clear best safety in football for a couple of years. Now, maybe not exactly, but he's still really, really good. As long as he can come back healthy, I think he's definitely worth taking a chance on. Even with an injury, it's different than being a corner. That's why a lot of corners, when they get older, they move to safety. It is something that you can. It's definitely not the DH equivalent in baseball, but it definitely I don't want to say it's easier either, but it's a different position, and it seems to be one of those positions where you can sustain an injury and come back and still play at a pretty good level at safety. So I'm pretty confident that Earl Thomas will not only come back and play well, but I think he'll be a 49er because Richard Sherman is going to recruit him. And I know that, he had been talking to Dallas, he told Jerry Jones, hey, sign me. But, I think it's very possible that because of the way that he left Seattle, did not leave under very good circumstances, I'm sure he'd love the opportunity to play Pete Carroll twice a year.
Right. That would be one big reason why he would come to San Francisco, but I'm sure he's going to make a decision that's best for him. And what I'm hoping is, maybe that best decision has something to do with, his good friend Richard Sherman. So,
right.
So we'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah. So then some other guys, Malcolm Smith and Pierre Garçon ended up being below average pickups just because of they weren't on the field very much, especially Malcolm Smith. Pierre Garçon had 2 season-ending injuries at the second half of both seasons, and that was disappointing because when he's out there, he's pretty good. He didn't really have his strongest season this year. We saw some really uncharacteristic drops, but they did bring him as a stopgap receiver. He's going to be 32 or 33 years old now. It's probably time to move on. Now, we were talking about wide receiver. The team clearly needs a number one to go with Marquise Goodwin, Dante Pettis, Trent Taylor, obviously George Kittle. But is it time? We've been hearing all these rumors, Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's 30 years old. Is that worth the number 2 pick? That's a hard sell for me.
You know what? I agree that the age makes you a little concerned. If it wasn't for the fact that when you look at him play this year and you look at his performance, he looks 30 to me.
No, he doesn't look 30.
He's still Tony. He's catching that ball and tapping those toes on the sideline. A great route runner still. He can throw it over the top to him, and he can throw it. I mean, you can take an immediate to him. I mean, he can run all the routes. So, I wouldn't question anything that these front office guys did, because you know what, they proved to me that they know what they're doing. They're smart, intelligent. They're football savvy, and that they're going to make the best decision for the overall health of this team. So if they decide that there is enough rush in in this draft that they can find somebody in the second, third round, and they want to trade. Now I don't know what's going to be asked for, getting Brown or Beckham. I think at the end of the day, if we can outscore people, the defense don't have to be as great as they need to be if we weren't as great on offense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
We can outscore people, and Shanahan, he scores a lot of points with or without, Antonio Brown and Beckham. So if he had those guys, we could get to those numbers a lot easier and faster, especially with Kittle playing the way that he's playing, and then still get a free agent corner, free agent safety, and then get one of those deep rush ends that they have in this draft. I mean, the results that we hope for still can be attained. So there are some options out there.
Yeah, I think Antonio Brown would be, man, I wasn't even considering him just because I didn't think there's any way he'd ever leave Pittsburgh. But after this season in Pittsburgh, I mean, it sure looks like they're going to deal him before March. So I, too, I'm very trusting of Lynch and Shanahan at this point. They haven't really given any reason to think that they're, not very good. And I mean, you can't just point at some failed draft picks. I mean, every team has some failed draft picks. That's just reality. But I think they've done enough to show that they're moving this team in the right direction. And if they felt Antonio Brown is the number one guy, I mean, he's been the best receiver in the league for a few years now. I think even better than Julio Jones. I really like Antonio Brown a lot. I just don't want to give up so much to get him. But, like you said, if they feel they can get options in the second, third round at pass rush, I mean, they drafted Kentavious Street last year, who would have been a much higher prospect at pass rusher, but he tore his ACL right before the workouts. And so he started practicing with the team at the end of the year. So they're saying he's ready to go. So he could be a contributor, but I do think they need to bring in a pretty highly rated edge rusher. If they feel they can get that guy in the second round and they can get Antonio Brown with the first round pick, I mean, that'd be really hard to knock.
I agree. I don't think anybody would be dissatisfied with it. And if they were, probably around the third to fifth game of the season, they'll come around and say, oh, they knew what they were doing, because the results are going to show. They're going to take the top off the roof, if that does happen, because Garoppolo and that offense is going to flourish big time.
Oh, man. I mean, you picture Antonio Brown, George Kittle, and then you put a healthy Dante Pettis and Marquise Goodwin back there with McKinnon.
That's right.
And Breida.
That's right.
This would be like the 92 Niners, the team you were on. They loaded up that offense so well. The defense wasn't as good, but they brought in Odessa Turner. They had Mike Sherrard, Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Brent Jones. They're loaded. And so all you guys did was outscore people.
That's right.
So who knows? Maybe they'll end up doing something like that. But I do want to see the defense get better. Reuben Foster leaves a pretty big hole. They do need to fill that linebacker core. I'm not really sure what they want to do. There are some interesting free agents out there. I mean, you look at Frank Clark. I got to believe Seattle will re-sign him because he's clearly their best defensive player right now. But if they were to let him go, and you get a young guy like Frank Clark, now you don't have to get an edge rusher early in the draft. You can do a couple of different things. There's Anthony Barr at linebacker at Minnesota. That would be interesting. Also, Cameron Wake, edge rusher out of at Miami. That's an interesting prospect as well.
Great option.
So you get one of these guys in free agency, that kind of changes your draft strategy.
It really does. I think those last two you mentioned are great options, and I guarantee you, I know Barr loves Minnesota, but things didn't quite turn out, the way they thought with quarterback change, and Barr's from L.A. I don't think he's going to L.A. with the talent that they have on that defense, but I tell you, I think he will want to get back to California, and San Francisco would not be a bad option. and he would be a great option, I believe, for the 49ers. And interestingly about Barr, just a little side note, I recruited Anthony Barr when he was in high school.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And when I was at Florida State, I flew to L.A., recruited him, and guess what we recruited him as? A running back.
Really?
He was a running back in high school.
I didn't know that.
A big, tall running back. And
that's a big running back.
Hey, he was a big running back, and then he got to UCLA, and he, moved him, to DN, which I think was a great move for him. And I did some research on him, and his dad played at Notre Dame, and I forgot his dad's name, but he was a popular player at Notre Dame. He just, took his mom's name. But dang, if you knew who he was, you'll see, his pedigree is pretty good. That's why he's a running back, But I think he would be a great choice. I don't know. There's been no wind of him interested in 49ers or the 49ers interested in him. But I think at the end of the day, why would you not if he's available and he's interested?
He's a real quality linebacker. I mean, there's another linebacker out there from Seattle, KJ Wright, who's, I think, one of the more underrated linebackers that he could shore up, with pairing either Barr or Wright with Fred Warner, I think would be big, and then you can draft someone. And then there's also defensive end Brandon Graham from Philly. That would also be pretty good. If I had it my way, I would love to see them bring in either Frank Clark or Cameron Wake, and then Earl Thomas and Anthony Barr. I think that would really change the defense.
Oh, man,
and then you could
change it.
Yeah. And then you could trade for Antonio Brown, and all of a sudden now you've got your number one receiver.
Yep, that's true.
So who knows?
We'll see what happens. There's not a great option.
So what else do you like at the draft? I mean, what are your favorite edge rusher prospects? Because that's the position of choice at the moment, and obviously they might need to get a corner or inside linebacker. But what do you like in the draft this year?
And again, it's all what they do. I guess what they do with that second pick, and what falls in their lap in the second, third round, even if they use that first pick on an edge rusher. Now, what's interesting is the edge rusher. If both is available, I think you got to get it. But there's some depth. I mean, depth there at defensive end, linebacker slot that will fulfill that edge rusher slot for them. And looking at what Clemson has done, how they've recruited and developed their guys in the mold of Alabama. I hate to say in the mold of Alabama because, one, they're an Alabama just in South Carolina. And with that defensive end, Cleveland Farrell at Clemson, I mean, he's available. He's been trained well. He's been lifted. He's strong. He's big. He's agile and very fluid. He could be an option. Josh Allen, with a lot of people, having the one or two, out of Kentucky. Rashawn Gary, defensive end, out of Michigan. Sweat, out of Mississippi State. And then Florida has one Polite. So there's a number of guys. And as this evaluation process goes forward and they work these guys out, and the 49ers are in a great position because they are coaching in the Senior Bowl. So what they're going to have an opportunity to do is see these guys up close and personal for an entire week. So they're going to know the ins and outs, how these guys think, how they work, how they practice, their mannerisms, and who fits within the 49ers organization. So they're in a very, very good, positive position to evaluate all of the guys that I just mentioned and see where they may fall to them early in the draft or later middle round and still get what they need.
Yeah, that's the thing. If they, you know that they're going to have, probably several different plans for addressing the needs of the defense because that's really what they're going to be doing. They're probably going to add depth on the offense. Maybe bring in possibly another running back, maybe another receiver. Maybe you're probably going to bring in at least one backup offensive lineman, maybe another backup tight end to replace Garrett Selleck. But you know that this draft's going to be defensive focused, because if they can get this defense to be anything, this is going to be a team that's headed to the playoffs. So I agree. I think, there's a lot of different ways they can do this. There's several different options. And it's just going to be a matter of what are they going to end up doing in free agency to kind of set up their draft strategy.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do. And they've got plenty enough time to look, evaluate, make sound decisions, and we keep going back to this. But who else would we want in the chair to make the decisions other than, Lynch and Cal, to make this decision? I think they put the team together well. They just unfortunately had injuries, but we get past those injuries, get guys healthy, and get all that talent that they are continuing to develop on the field, they're going to be able to compete. Not as soon as, we thought they would compete rather quickly, and they would have if it wasn't for injuries. But I think they're going to be back fairly quickly once all these guys get healthy in 2019.
Yeah, I just don't think there's any doubt of that. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is out to prove that he is the real deal. I think Jerick McKinnon is out to prove that he is worth every penny they paid for him. Imagine Matt Breida this year without an ankle injury. I mean, he's playing through that ankle injury all year long, and he was still averaging like 5-6 yards. Yeah, he's still getting like 5-6 yards a carry. Imagine him healthy. And, then you've got George Kittle over the middle. You've got, Goodwin had he had some injuries early on, and then he had some family issues that, man, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. The things that he went through this year, it was just, he had a real tough season emotionally, and so I have no doubt that he'll be back next year. And he's actually fared rather well. He had the one major injury early in the season with that quad injury that he sustained. But other than that, he's been healthy for these 2 years. So hopefully he comes back and is the deep threat that they know he can be. And that's going to be pretty hard to stop, especially if they get a guy like Antonio Brown.
Right. And I think that, and I was just thinking this as you were talking, we had some unfortunate injuries. But one thing that we want to make sure we get in Garoppolo's ear about is the same thing that Lamar Jackson needs to learn is why do you want to cut back into a defender? Just go out of bounds.
I don't think he'll ever do that again.
Yeah. Garoppolo, we love you, man. We're not going to judge you, because 3 inches, you didn't get those 3 inches. Just go out of bounds, man. Live to play the next play.
Exactly. I know, especially looking back, it's like, oh, man, if he doesn't cut back, who knows how different this season is.
That's true. But since he did cut back, again, we found out that our third stringer was a player.
Yeah. Nick Mullins is definitely a player.
He's a player. And we have more value now than we did coming into the season, with that position.
Well, I would say, going into this offseason, I think we're all hoping for a little bit more aggression in free agency, not out of control spending, but I think if they can bring in 3 impact players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, things could be very different next year for this defense.
Absolutely. I think that's where everybody's excitement is about, and we have great anticipation on that. Very optimistic about 2019. So, this being our last show, hopefully, we've given some valuable information out, and really can make the fans, to be even more faithful than they are now, because the 49ers' future is very, very bright.
Yeah, it's definitely it was an up and down season to watch on TV, but it was always fun getting on the show with you, and it was great. This is season number 4 is in the books, and I'm really looking forward to season number 5.
I am too. It's been a pleasure, talking and, not just on the show, but, continue to develop our friendship and finally get together out, for a game in San Francisco this year. And now, just as you said, moving forward, to year 5, and hopefully, who knows how it could be. It could be a Super Bowl year for the 49ers, and if it is, it's going to be great to go through this season with you. As it would if it wasn't a Super Bowl year. But I'm looking forward to it to being, an optimistic Super Bowl year, and let's just enjoy it. Give the fans some great conversation, and be excited.
Oh, no question. I feel the same way. And, we've been through a couple of really rough seasons at the 2-14 season, so how sweet is it going to be when it's a winning season? Because we've been having so much fun in losing seasons, so it'll be that much sweeter to watch them turn this whole thing around and finally get where they want to go. So I look forward to year 5, and we'll be back doing probably doing a free agent show. We'll probably doing a draft show, and we have a couple ideas in the works for year 5 where we can get on a little bit more. So I want to thank everyone for being with us this year, and stay faithful. This is going to be this 2019, very, very promising season. So you're going to want to be faithful to your Niners, because when they turn this around and they're healthy, you're going to be able to say you were with them in the thick and the thin.
Everybody have a great off season. Just saying, everybody have a great off season. Stay healthy, and look forward to next year.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will definitely catch you next year. So for Dexter Carter, I'm Matt Andruscavage. You've been listening to the 49ers Weekly Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network, where the legends speak.